We're really thrilled to be able to do this. Dan reached out to us, and he and I had lunch and hit it off pretty quickly. And so it was a pleasure to be able to invite him up here to talk to you guys about the vocation of a congressperson, in particular of a Catholic congressperson, and even more specifically of the rarest of creatures, a pro-life Democrat. We're super pleased.
Glad to hear affirmation for that.
Yeah, there you go. So maybe some more.
I don't get a whole lot of that all the time, especially not here in Washington.
Here you will, down there you won't. Northeast is okay. Northeast is safe territory. So this is how we're going to do this. We're just going to start having a conversation, Congressman Lipinski and I, and then I'll just open it up to you guys. I'm sure you have questions for him, and we'll have a lot of fun together learning a little bit about what he does and why and how he does it. Okay, sound good? Congressman for the 3rd District in Chicago, tell us a little bit about the people you serve.
Well, let me start by thanking you for having me here. Thank the Institute for Human Ecology for hosting. It's been a long week for me. It's still only Thursday, early mornings and late nights. And since this is the Catholic University, I hope I'm safe to ask you if you could all pray for my mother and father. My mother has some health issues, and so I ask for your prayers for her and for our family. But it is and I admit, anyone who comes up and talks to me afterwards, yes, I did have a beer before I came here. I had a beer tasting fundraiser. My chief of staff home brews, and it actually, okay, most home brews I've had are not that good, but he's actually has some really good beer, so he figured it'd be fun to have a fundraiser that featured beer. So yes, especially in light of the hearing in the Senate today, yes, I did have a beer before I came here.
Have you ever blacked out?
No, I have not ever blacked out. And I can really go through my whole history. I never drank any alcohol when I was in high school, at least not that I
You don't have to
remember.
We wanted to be all safe. Let's talk about the people you serve first. Let's start there again.
You're really afraid I'm going to go down that road.
I'm trying to protect you.
Thank you. I don't need protection, though. Well, on those things, I still think. No, I know I don't. But you never know what's pre-pill going to hurl at you, which unfortunately is what politics is today. But my district is southwest side of Chicago, southwestern suburbs. About a third of it is in the city. A third of the vote comes from inside the city limits. The rest in the surrounding suburbs. I actually do have a couple of farms in my district, which won't be there for too much longer before they are turned into housing. But that's it's a urban suburban district. This district was drawn to include a lot of still the old-fashioned Democrats, like I am in many ways, a Democrat from 50, 60 years ago, a lot of Catholics. So a lot of people either still live in the city or they grew up in the city. And so still there's a lot of Catholic parishes, a lot of Catholic schools, though there are fewer and fewer Catholic schools. They're closing along with the parishes. It has a growing Hispanic population, not just in the city portion, but in other portions also. Actually, it has a growing Arab population. It's not huge, but it's significant. But for the most part, it's a middle-class ethnic in the churches. Catholic churches, the area has always played a large role, but as with everywhere else, a smaller and smaller role. Fewer and fewer, kids going to Catholic schools in the area. But I went to Catholic school, grade school, and to high school. And Catholic schools have always been very, I do everything I can to help promote Catholic schools. I know how important they were to me, and my wife also, who's from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. She went to 12 years of Catholic school, so I always try to promote Catholic education.
Great, great. How long have you been representing that area? When were you first?
I was first elected in 2004, so this is my 14th year.
How much has changed in that time from then to now? Both in terms of the people that you serve, but also then in terms of what you're involved in Congress, and maybe even speak to some of the divisiveness that seems to characterize our politics. Has that gotten worse, or is that just a perception?
It has gotten worse.
Okay.
No question.
Even in that short period of time?
Worse. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've seen a significant change. Now, maybe can people hear me? I want to make sure. Hard for me to...
a little louder?
No. Oh, you're good. You're good. Okay. Yeah, it's changed significantly. My father was a member of Congress before I was. He served this seat. I hate to say that because people then think, well, I grew up in this, well-to-do family and all stuff. My father didn't go to college. My father got into politics as an alderman in Chicago City Council. He didn't go to college. He rose up in the Chicago Park District, starting out as a physical education instructor. So I always think of I grew up, that's what my father was. He worked in the Chicago Park District. And he came into politics an old-fashioned way that there really not a whole lot of people do anymore. Yeah. But my father had a very, he viewed politics and the role of an elected official as you help people. Sort of the bottom line, that's what I always said. He always said, you help people. And it wasn't, I don't think he really felt so ideologically driven. He didn't think about it, but he was a Catholic, and that sort of motivated a lot of the things that he thought and the way that he voted. But I don't think he thought about that a whole lot. I had very different from my father. I went to college, got a bachelor's degree, then got a master's degree, then got a PhD. And I was teaching, and my father retired, and I moved back to Chicago area and ran for that seat. So when I got into politics just in 2004, things had changed. There's less bipartisanship. But things have really gotten so much worse. And I think that the parties, there's a few reasons, and I could go on forever, so I'll try. I used to be a professor. I could talk forever. So I have to always stop myself. Now I'm a politician, so I got to stop myself. And but yeah, there's definitely a change, and I'm been very involved in there's something called the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House. It's 24 Democrats, 24 Republicans, and they were trying to bring people together for try to come up with bipartisan solutions. I think you can compromise on pretty much anything. You don't give up your principles, but you can still compromise on legislation and what you're going to do. And I always think it's just trying to make things a little bit better. But the parties have really gotten more homogeneous. There's, Democrats and Republicans have. It used to be that you had conservative, good number of conservative Democrats, largely Southerners, but not all, and you had some more liberal Republicans, and the parties have really sorted out, and that has made it tougher, and the relationships aren't there as they used to be between Democrats and Republicans. And actually, former Senator Trent Lott was talking about one of the reasons for that is members of Congress just don't spend time with each other. They don't live here in Washington. I come in just before the first vote and leave immediately after the last vote of the week. I'm home every weekend. I have relationships so across the aisle, and many of them are, first of all, Catholics who are in the Republican Party, and also because I'm pro-life, that is sort of on both sides. People take that as a signal. There are people in my party take that as a signal that, this is someone who's different from us and doesn't fit in. Republicans take that as a signal that he's someone that, shares at least some of my values. And I've found that having just gone through a very, very difficult primary, we have gotten to a place, I think, in politics, but also in society, where a lot of people just look at, okay, you have two camps now. It's not just political and social. All right, and you fit into one of these boxes. There's two boxes, and you fit into one of those boxes. And I think, thinking about it after the primary back in March, just 6 months ago, I think a lot of people put me in because I'm pro-life, and because I'm Catholic and I'm a practicing Catholic, and I've talked about religious liberty. I think people put me in that Republican box. He's one of those. And then they assign to me all these other things that they think about people in that box and think that I believe and vote the way that everyone in that box does. And this is part of, it makes it so hard for people to talk because they don't understand each other, and it's fine to have different points of view and different worldviews even, but people of different worldviews should be talking to each other and try to understand each other. Doesn't mean you have to change, but you need to understand each other. And I think that's a big problem that we have today in our society. And I just really, after thinking about it for a while, I would, during this primary election campaign, I would make the point that I'm supported by, I have a 92% lifetime voting record with the AFL-CIO, so that's on union issues. I'm strongly supported by most of the unions, although a couple of them were against me, and they're against me because of my position on other issues that had nothing to do with working men and women. People would assume that I had you're in the Republican box, so you're anti-environment. I have had a 100% voting record for the last couple of Congresses with the League of Conservation Voters. But then my opponent threw at me, well, you voted for the Keystone Pipeline. Well, okay, so then, again, we use these little things and say, well, therefore he's in that kind of box. And people, one last thing on this, people don't understand that especially if you're Catholic, not every Catholic, but these are Catholic views. A lot of the views that I have and that I, believe and I try to follow, so much of it is Catholic, and people don't understand. You can't be here and here because those don't fit. And I think, well, this is what as a Catholic I grew up believing and being taught, and where the Catholic Church, I think, largely is today talking about this issue, but it's just not accepted. And we see Catholics split now almost 50-50 in this country between Democrat and Republican. But anyway, I'll stop and let you ask.
No, it's okay. I think you've opened up a lot of avenues to ask questions, I think, and I certainly don't want to exhaust all of them. I want to give other people an opportunity to ask questions as well. But among the things you suggested is at least partly generational, right? So what you described is, as you said, sort of 50 years or more old Catholic Democratic position, right? Which again, being roughly the same age, virtually the same age as you are, it rings completely true to me, right? This sort of pro-union, pro-life, Democratic Catholic, especially from the big cities. I'm from New York, you're from Chicago, right? And that of course was our experience, but we know right? At some point that kind of blew up a little bit. And what you described was that in a way more revealing than being Democrat is your position on pro-life, at least to some people. It's more significant to them that you identify as pro-life than that you identify as a Democrat, right? And that itself is, a fascinating change, right? That, well, then you must be almost like a wolf in sheep's clothing as a Democrat. And so the Republicans see you as probably an ally, at least some of them, in a way they wouldn't see their typical Democratic peers. And then your own colleagues in the Democratic side of the aisle see you as probably more a potential antagonist. That's right.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's as you're describing, it's a real shame, right? Real change. Let's go back though to the relationship of your faith to your service as a politician. So you described that your father was a politician before you in the same district, right? And you went off and pursued academia, and then came home and took his space. Did you, first of all, I'm driving the question towards how this relates to your faith, but did you feel growing up that serving in politics was inevitable for you? I'm the son of a politician, therefore, it's just going to a matter of time before I do that, in part because it was, you described it as an extension of his own service, right? An extension of his own faith. Or did you see your faith as presenting to you multiple opportunities that were real opportunities, and then something tipped you towards service in politics?
Well, growing up, I had I saw politics through my father, and I was always very shy and introverted, and so in some ways it really appealed to me. In other ways, I thought that I don't want to. And that's not the
Hence
life that I
academia.
want.
We're all introverts in academia.
So it all makes sense.
That's right.
But I also always had interest in policy, and I started telling this story more recently than I used to. I actually had a friend who was an interesting person. He's 2 years older than me, but I was interested in, so this is like 12 years old, I was interested in animals and animal welfare, and we put together a petition. We wrote up our own petition to send to the Japanese government to ask them to stop their tuna fishermen from killing dolphins when they're fishing for tuna. You hear dolphin save tuna now, this is before that time. I always had something in me that I wanted to right wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of that is growing up, going to Catholic school. And I think a lot of that just is being Catholic and sort of seeing that's something I'm supposed to do. So I thought I was going to go into politics, even though, and I was like, is it really going to suit me? I went to college. I remember vividly talking to my father about as my freshman year, I just started at Northwestern, and I can major in engineering because I'm good at math and science, or because my plan is to go to law school and go into politics, I could major in poli-sci. My father said, you're not going to learn anything in political science that can help you whatsoever to be a politician. So I majored in mechanical engineering. Being a very practical-minded person, I thought I could always get a job as an engineer. Somewhere in college, I started thinking, I don't really want to go into politics, so I won't go into the rest of it. I wound up thinking I want to be a professor. That suits me better. I still always loved government politics. That's why I went from I got 2 engineering degrees, Northwestern, Stanford, and I was like, I want to teach, I want to be a professor. And if I'm going to do that, I should do whatever they love. That's government politics and policy. So that's what I should go and study, get a PhD. I got a PhD then at Duke and was a assistant professor, taught at Notre Dame for a year. Then I was at University of Tennessee. My book was finally coming out, University of Michigan Press. It was going to be a big deal. I was like, this is my opportunity to go and get a job somewhere I always wanted. And then my father tells me he's retiring from Congress. I just got married less than a year before this, never talked to my wife about going to politics. And for whatever reason, when he said that, I said, I think I might be interested in running. Because kind of surprised myself with that, and the draw was still there.
Yeah.
And to do that, and I love teaching. That's why I love. One of the reasons I asked to come here is I love being on campus. I now have much better stories to tell than when I was a assistant professor. But I thought there's more that I can do and have an impact, and I had that opportunity. If it wasn't for my father paved the way, and I'm not, I wouldn't have done it myself. I wouldn't have started from the ground up.
Sure.
I admit that. So that's
Now,
how.
now I'm dying to know, was your father right about the mechanical engineering degrees? So in other words, what committees are you on? Do you get to put your degrees into engineering to work, or should you have studied poli-sci?
College would have been easier.
If you'd studied poli-sci. Fair enough. There's probably a few poli-sci majors in the room as well.
And there were days when I was teaching political science where I was thinking, is this really valuable? But I was teaching it, so yes, it was valuable. I'm on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and I'm on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And I love the Science, Space, and Technology Committee because as an engineer, I just love all the stuff I get to learn about, and I've been doing a lot for the last 3 years on driverless cars and technology involved. I love new technology, what's going on, and been involved in trying to spur entrepreneurship, and so it's helpful.
So he was right.
It's helpful to me to have that, and it also I think is a good way to think, although it's always an age-old question. Did I think this way before I became an engineer, or did going through engineering school make me think this way? But I sort of had that very analytical thought process.
One more question then. You guys have questions? Yes? Okay, good. Then we'll open it up to some questions from people. Okay, and I've got more too, but so years ago, I was a grad student at Notre Dame, and I was having lunch with a now deceased prominent Catholic moral philosopher. And this Catholic moral philosopher told me, I don't think a Catholic could in good conscience be a politician. Okay?
You're not going to tell me who it is?
I'll tell you who it is. It was Jermaine Grisette. If that name means anything to you, it probably does to a few people in the room. Yeah, so this was 25 years ago, he said that. And here you are, you're a Catholic politician, for whom I assume being Catholic is critical to your service. He obviously thought that some of the compromises that are required by politicians were antithetical to faith, or just the process of having to compromise would lead to compromises of principle. You must think he's wrong.
I hope so.
Or you haven't thought about it.
No, I've thought about it, and
I'm
I
sure you
actually
have.
thought that I should have made this talk. Well, actually, I thought about it, and I thought, no, I don't want to even set that question out there. Can you be a faithful Catholic and a good public servant? But that really, I mean, it's
a big question, clearly, right?
It is. It is, and it's something I've thought about. And well, in some way, it depends on I can say my constituents decide if I'm a good public servant or not. Although they put me in or not, and I won't know if I'm a faithful Catholic really until I die. I sort of feel that way, but I believe, or else I wouldn't be doing this, that I can do both.
Well,
But it's a constant struggle. It is something, and I got the Catholic guilt that I think about these things, and there are compromises that have to be made. But I think the bottom line for me is I have to believe that, because I don't want to think. Okay, how many people have read The Benedict Option? Or did anyone read it? Familiar with it? As I read that, I hate to say this, being an academic, I stopped reading books a while ago because I'm like, I don't have time to read books. And I finally said, I just got to start. I'm just going to do it. So that was the first book that I picked up, and I really wanted to read it. And people had criticized it, saying, well, he's saying you should remove yourselves from the world and just get in your little Christian communities, and that's not what he's saying. And I don't believe that's, I think as a Catholic, I'm called to engage the world. It's a requirement that I engage the world. That's the way I feel. Yes, there are some Catholics. I always question those monks, cloistered nuns. That's hard for me to understand. But if there's they feel that's what God's calling them to do. But I've always felt that I'm called to be active in the world and try to live out my faith and make this a better world. And so I think it's as Bishop Barrett would say, we're both and religion, and so I want to be both a faithful Catholic and a good public servant, and I think it's possible to do that.
Great. Why don't we open this up to some questions? If people have questions, and do we have a mic for a question? We do have at least, we have 2 mics. Okay, so we have hands. Why don't we just start over here? I see a hand over on our right-hand side.
It's always good when I walk in somewhere into a crowd that's going to ask me questions and there's no one in a Handmaid's Tale outfit. It doesn't happen too often anymore.
Hi, I'm Catherine, and I was just wondering, do you think that there's hope for the pro-life movement, especially with the midterms on the way? With your experience, what's your insight on that?
I think there's hope for the pro-life movement because there are more and more young people who are pro-life. I don't think this election is going to be good for the pro-life movement. I'll say it just because I think it's something interesting and somewhat controversial. I've been concerned about the pro-life movement embracing President Trump as much as it has. I'm afraid that because of that, President Trump, people are going to say, put Donald Trump's face on the pro-life movement. And that's not good. That's not good for the pro-life movement. I was scheduled to speak at the March for Life. I was actually, they want to have a Democrat up there, they wanted me to speak, and I agreed to do it, and then I found out that Donald Trump was going to be speaking, and I was like, it wasn't just political, although politically it would have been very difficult, especially a couple months before my primary, to do that, but I just personally felt like, I don't see how I do that, because, so I don't know what he's going to say even. If I'm going to be up on stage and Donald Trump is speaking, I just don't want to be a part of that. And so I withdrew from speaking at that. And it very much concerns me that I understand he's done some very good things when it comes to protecting life, but I'm scared that getting too close, it's gonna hurt the movement in the long run. And I don't think that's good. So it's something I think is a challenge for people, everyone who's pro-life right now.
Super. You had a question, right? Right here in the front.
Hi.
Thank you.
So thank you for speaking to us. I remember reading this spring about your primary against Marie Newman, and I was wondering, since you mentioned polarization, what your thoughts are on how party primaries contribute to that by producing more ideologically extreme candidates, and what do you think could be done to help resolve that?
The primaries produce the more ideological extreme candidates, more people who vote in primaries are more the party activists. They're more likely to be more extreme in the party. Independents don't vote. Independents are oftentimes people who actually do see things that they agree with and disagree with both sides. well, unfortunately, in Illinois, we have open primaries, so people can vote in the Democratic primary. You didn't have to be a registered Democrat. So that was good. That's better than closed primary system. People talk a lot about gerrymandering to districts, so you don't have to really worry about a challenge from the other party. It's more a challenge within your own party. I think that's part of the problem. I think how you draw the districts differently is tough. There's no easy answers. We are segregating ourselves now into communities of like-thinking people, which hurts the it's just more natural to do that. What I'd really like to see, I would like to see the type of primaries they have in California and in Washington. I think Washington has it. Louisiana has it, where everyone runs at the same time on the same ballot. So you'll have multiple Democrats, multiple Republicans, and then the top two go into a second round. And we haven't seen for sure that makes a difference yet, but that's one possible way to try to make it. So you get everyone out to vote, maybe you get some more centrist people, candidates.
Congressman, thank you for your time. My name is David. I'm a senator here for the Archdiocese of Washington. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your unique position as a pro-life Democrat and how that's affected your relationship within the church. Because you already spoke about the difficulties that being pro-life has kind of had within the Democratic Party. And I was wondering if it's caused any difficulties within the life of the church, especially as you just said, with the pro-life movement's eagerness to embrace Trumpian politics, for lack of a better phrase, things along those lines.
Well, I oftentimes stop myself before saying something. I was like, should I say this or not? Unfortunately, let me talk about the easier part, although maybe I shouldn't touch this, but I will. They say the Affordable Care Act, the debate over the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was really very detrimental, I think, for the church and church unity. It came down to, I think there was an attempt politically to divide the church on this issue in the Catholic Bishops' Conference, which at that time the president was Cardinal George from Chicago. Was very much, opposed because of the language on public funding for abortion. And then you had the Catholic Health Association that was in favor of it. And I had in the final days of the Democrats trying to get the votes for the first time the bill went through the House, I voted for it because we got the Stupak amendment in there. To sort of take away the public funding for abortion or health insurance that covers abortion. Then it didn't have that the second time, and I had a meeting with someone in House leadership, Democratic House leadership, who I said I have an issue. I had other issues with the bill besides on the funding for abortion. But I said that's a major issue that I have, and I was told, well, the nuns are for it. And what I said was, the nuns are for it. The nuns don't believe that. And I said, well, if you can get Cardinal George in here to say that this bill as written does not provide public funding for abortion and insurance that covers abortion, then maybe I will believe that. I knew what was in the bill, I knew what was written, but that was being used. And that made it, there were Catholics who I talked to, it was really hard for them. It was so hard because they felt like the bishops are saying one thing, but there's Catholics who are saying something different. I don't know who to believe. I don't know. And it was, I had one member come up to me and say, I am having a hard time sticking with my position that I can't vote for this because it funds abortion, I'm afraid people are going to look at me like I'm a kook because the nuns are out there saying, no, it doesn't. And I just think that was a really hard thing in the church, and that sort of, those divisions had always been there, but I think that sort of stoked those divisions. And I think since that time, things have only gotten worse in the church, and what's happened lately has even made it, things have gotten worse, and that's just really a bad situation for the church.
I think there's some questions over on this side of the room. I see this fellow up front, and then Dan in the back.
Thank you. I'm from Chicagoland, so this is going to be a bit more pointed.
Where in Chicago?
River Forest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not my district.
Yeah, just missed you. I got Congressman Davis. What do you think it says about the ILGOP that you're running against Arthur Jones?
It actually says nothing about the Illinois. Martha Jones, my opponent, is a Nazi, and this is not hyperbole. He used to be a member of the Nazi Party, although he says he left, but he is a Holocaust denier. He believes that communities should be able to pass some kind of laws to keep their communities white. Just really, and this guy's been around for a long time, and I didn't even know how awful his views and thoughts were until he got the Republican nomination. How did he get the Republican nomination? To run against me, he was the only one who filed petitions to run. I don't think it says anything about the Republican Party except no Republican thought that they could beat me, essentially. And he was the only one who, he's just looking he wants a megaphone. I don't believe Arthur Jones even really believes he can win, but he's gotten so much attention. He's been on MSNBC and CNN, he's been in the New York Times and Washington Post, and I keep saying, just ignore this guy, don't give him the megaphone. He's not going to win. He's been running for office for decades. Ignore the guy in his, people have said, oh, you could use this to help, do more for you, and I just think we should ignore this guy. He's not going to win. He's not a real threat because his only threat is if he can reach more people with his vile views and somehow rope some more people in. So let's try to ignore him. And I don't think it says anything about the Republican Party except no one else wanted to run because no Republican thought they could beat me, especially this year. And they actually, Republican Party sent out mail saying don't vote for this guy in the primary, but he's the only one on the ballot. People go through and check. There's one person, they check that box, and he got 20,000 votes. I don't think 20,000 people believe his garbage, but anyway, that's enough. I'm just tired of having to fend off the media. Why? Because it's clickbait. They put Nazi in a headline, and they know people are going to click it. And so they like writing those stories, which really don't get me going on the media.
Well, it would be nice to see them exercise more responsibility here for the sake of the good, right? And the public good and so on.
Yeah, and they don't whatsoever.
Dan?
Could you just name for us one or two current Republican politicians who you admire, plus one or two Democratic politicians, either past or present, who you admire in the same way?
Jeff Fortenberry, a Republican from Nebraska, who I work closely with on a number of issues, Catholic. He has worked on it, and I've been involved with the last 5 years. There's something called the International Catholic Legislators Network. So it's Catholic legislators from around the world that get together. The 9th meeting just occurred. This is something that was put together by Austrian Cardinal Schönborn, to bring, it's just wonderful, Catholic legislators from every continent, except Antarctica, come together in Frascati, just outside of Rome, for 3.5 days, and talk about issues that we're all dealing with in our countries that are, we as Catholics have something to say about them. And we focused a lot in the last couple of years on the defending Christians in the Middle East, and Jeff has been very, very good on those issues. Keith Rothfuss is another Republican who Keith is probably going to lose his Hughes redistricts in Pennsylvania, and some things I would tell you after his election is over, because I don't want to hurt him in any way that I might say that might not help him in this race. But he's been a very good and another good, very faithful Catholic. Juan Vargas is a Democrat from California who was in, he was trained to become a Jesuit priest, and he's someone who I respect a lot. I went to Jesuit high school. I went to Jesuit high school, not necessarily Catholic high school. And this was back in the early 80s. And I won't get into that. But times of liberation theology and in other things there. But Juan is a good respect for Juan Vargas.
Megan, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Congressman, for your remarks. You mentioned that you thought that maybe the association with Trump and the pro-life movement would not be good for sort of the long-term goals of the pro-life movement. And so I was wondering if you could enumerate what you think might be some good short-term and long-term goals for the movement, just sort of given the grave nature of what abortion is. Sometimes it's hard to think about it as a long-term game when you realize what's happening on a daily basis. So what do you think are things that the pro-life movement should be doing, both politically and outside of the political realm?
I think that most important is outside the political realm. So let me start there. It's the numbers are been moving in a positive direction for people who are younger on this issue. Although I'm afraid that I think lately something came out that didn't look as good, and I don't know if that's already seeing some effect of President Trump. I think the most important thing right now is to get more women, especially young women, involved. And it is so hard as a male to it's much harder for a man to speak about these issues than for a woman in terms of the acceptance of speaking about it. And I think that's something that unfortunately there are some women who are really out there and active, but I think there are a lot that of women who I wish would get out there some more, and we need to recruit and encourage women to speak out in their opposition to abortion and talk about what abortion is. And it's so hard to even get anywhere in talking about even what abortion is. And the discussions just get shut down immediately. And women are going to be listened to more than men are on this. Politically, I think, yes, partially this is self-serving, but I think we need to figure out some way to support pro-life Democrats. I think it's going to be very detrimental if there are no pro-life Democrats in public office anymore. There's no voices. I mean, I just had a colleague talk to me today who asked me what the issue was, and what the biggest issue in my primary, and I said abortion, and he said to me, he said, even though I don't agree with you, I have a lot of respect for the fact that you have that position, and you've held on to that position, because I've seen other people change, and I don't understand how people change on that issue. And so I think that's why there was such an effort. $3 million was spent to knock me out in the primaries, because they don't like to see. Now, the more I say that, of course, the more they're going to come after me. But at this point, I think they've figured it out. But I don't get the same sort of look. There was a super PAC put together that spent $1.4 million, put together by NARAL. NARAL, National Abortion Rights. Actually, the Human Rights Campaign also put some money in there. That much money, there's not that kind of support on the pro-life side. And there are a lot of people who are pro-life who just won't support a Democrat. And they say, well, you can't be a Democrat if you're pro-life. And I've run into that problem. I've seen other Democrats run into that problem. I had one colleague who had a 100% pro-life record. It's a wonderful guy. And I was trying to get one of these pro-life groups to support him. He had a tough race. And they just couldn't. I was told the board won't fund a Democrat. And he lost. And we lost a great pro-life Democratic voice because of that. And I hate to say it, but we can't keep going down that same road.
Sir, there's a microphone coming.
Hello, my name is Jack Maczynski, and I'm Polish-American. I know you're half Polish-American.
3/4.
3/4, okay, I'm sorry. Okay. I would like to thank you for your position on abortion, but my question is for the following. Have you been during the debate on Just Act 447? And if no, why haven't you been, or why have you been? And this act will cost Poland $300 billion. I don't know whether you are aware about that. $300 billion. That's my question. If you cannot answer now, I would like, I can.
What now? Can you repeat? What is?
Just Act 447 about the hairless compensation of lost properties. Hairless. It will cost Poland $300 billion. I'm asking you because this is a very important issue. Thank you very much.
Okay, we can talk about that later.
Fine. That's fine. Okay, no,
I
sorry.
understand.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's fine. That's okay. That's correct.
By the way, you're talking about pro-life women, and the need for women to be involved. You should make sure you meet some of the Sisters of Life who are in the back of the room. I don't know if you've met them before, but they're part of an apostolate who's dedicated their lives to serving women in crisis pregnancies, and they're among the kinds of women I think that you're calling for that we need to see more and more of. Are there other questions for Congressman Lipinski? Sister, why don't we start with you? Hold on one second, just wait for the mic.
What I'm kind of interested in is, obviously, I'm kind of Republican, but I would think that someone would be a little bit fearful to support a pro-life Democrat, thinking that where they put their votes, and if their presidential votes in particular, do you find that, or? Because that would be my concern, because in certain things I'm more Republican, I understand certain Democratic issues, and I look at those issues, but really I'd just be more concerned about presidential issues too, in supporting a pro-life Democrat. Not that I don't support pro-life Democrats, but I'm just wondering if that would be, if you think that's some of the concerns.
Well, I think there's a number of concerns. I don't think that should be as much of a concern as, what I think has been a bigger issue is especially after the Affordable Care Act and the STUPAC group, I think that there's a lot of trust that was lost, and a lot of people said, we can't really trust the pro-life Democrats. They say they're pro-life, and it came down to a tough vote, and they didn't really stick there. They didn't stand up for what they claim that they believe, and I think that's. Look, admittedly, there are people who have have changed, who have flipped, but I think if someone really, truly, and it's hard to judge someone who doesn't have a track record, but they have a track record of voting pro-life, I think that, it's their votes that are the most important thing in voice out there. So I think that's what's most important there. I don't have any real, I sort of feel I don't have any real impact on the presidential election. So that doesn't matter as so much.
Let me ask you a question. You've referred a couple times to the Affordable Care Act and the bishops and so on, and they're about a half mile from here. Obviously, a large part of what they do is try to influence legislation from the perspective of Catholic social teaching. From your perspective, what's the kind of impact they actually have? Do you see them having impact? Does it really just sort of vary from issue to issue? Do they ever become an impediment to what you think is good legislation?
My impression is the impact has really waned. I think as so much pivots off of that Affordable Care Act, I think after that, in some ways, maybe it was viewed as the bishops were against this, and it got passed anyway, so maybe we don't need to be so concerned anymore.
Yeah.
But I also think that the issues of just issues in the church have really been harmful to the bishops really having that much of an impact. And I just don't think they have the impact. And I think now, even, with what's going on in the church now, I think it may be even less of an impact. And I hate to see that, but that's sort of the way
Yeah. Other questions? Right up here.
Hello. I'm interested in your views about how the news media has played a role in the political divide, and do you think that the president is at all justified in his criticisms of the media?
I can't answer that question. I'll talk about my own perspective. And then you can extrapolate to what that means. I think the media are... I used to also study... I studied Congress and media and politics when I was a professor, grad student, and the news media just really bother me tremendously, and I think more and more that the personal views of the reporters, of the people who run newspapers, networks, are, I think you could see them in coverage, and I really believe that the being pro-life hurts me with coverage that I receive, especially during an election. It just, again, they put me into that box, and they're going to it seems to me more and more people involved in media feel more and more free to be non-objective in what they are reporting, in what they're saying, and they'll try to pretend like they're not, but sometimes it may not even be. They may not be consciously doing it, but I think we do see it, and I also think that we have a huge problem in this country with the lack of we don't have institutional trust, and support of institutions just really greatly diminished. Back in the 90s, I remember talking about this when I was in grad school and how it had gone down. It's like, well, the 90s now looks like a golden age compared to the trust that people have for in all institutions now. And I mean, that's one of the things that bothers me about President Trump is just he's happy just destroying institutions. Now institutions also destroy themselves, and I put the media into that also. The church has done, people in the church have done things that have really hurt the church, and we cannot have a good functioning society if we don't trust any. We don't have any institutions that we trust. So media. I don't know what can really be done about that though. It seems to be going back. There was a time. This is something that just because it's something that I studied a little bit. There was a time in this country though where we had sort of what we have now, but they're more upfront about it. We didn't have the idea of an objective news media is, a really early 20th century that it came about. Even that thought of it. Before that, it was all, everyone knew what side they were coming from. Those who were, before the mass media, I mean, it was all printed, obviously, but people knew where it was coming from, but it was, sort of what we're like more now today, but today there's sort of this veneer still that it's objective. That's sort of the way that I see it.
I saw a couple more hands. Did you have a hand? Right here.
What is your view of the bishop's commentary on like specific pieces of policy or legislation versus sort of more general framing of social teaching and whatnot? What's your view of their role or their non-role in specific commentary?
I think that as an academic, as someone who likes to really think through issues and someone who, I always say my staff has a much harder job than most staff on Capitol Hill because I actually think about these issues and I want to know and make them think about the issues. It's very easy to be a member of Congress for the most part and just, take the cue from your party leader. This is how you're supposed to vote on things. And then if there's an issue, most issues you sort of know where you line up, and you never actually try to work things out or try to come up with a compromise solution. Having said all that, and I think that's important, so I think it's good for bishops to be talking, more broadly. Fewer and fewer people pay attention to any of that anymore, and again, it's terrible that's the case. Hope you are all in college. You're supposed to be thinking deeply about all these things. All right, I was in college and I didn't think nearly as deeply as I should have, but I was an engineer. People only really pay attention when it comes down to something more concrete, it seems. But I think it's important to have both. But I think most people don't, in terms of what's effective, I think most people don't pay attention to the things that are more general and theoretical.
Yes.
So, of course. One thing is the Democratic platform. I mean, you don't agree with the Democratic platform on some issues, right?
No.
And
it doesn't mean anything to me.
Right, but how can we, but it means something to a lot of other people, you know what I mean? Because they take it seriously. And that's why they'll, just judge all Democrats as being one way because they think they all follow the platform. But how can we change that platform so it's more in line with Roman Catholic teachings?
Well, we've tried and have not had success at doing that. The reason I said the Democratic platform doesn't matter to me is because I don't even know exactly everything that's, I say, not that I don't know everything, I don't know much of anything that's in there. In terms of the official platform, every 4 years at the convention, there's an official platform, but I don't know how much, I don't think that makes any difference whatsoever. It's more of a reflection of the party now. I would like it to have, as it used to be, much more welcoming to pro-life Democrats, and now it's just gone completely. I mean, now it's, we had 62 Democrats who voted for the Stupak Amendment on the Affordable Care Act the first time it went through the House. 62 Democrats who said, we don't want taxpayer funding for abortion. The Democratic Party platform now is public funding for abortion. To me, unfortunately, it's more of a reflection of where a large part of the activists in the party have come to. But you still have 20, the last survey, I think, that the Knights of Columbus had, they're responsible for having a survey taken, said I think 28% of Democratic people who identify themselves as Democratic voters, 28% say that they're pro-life. And that's an argument that I keep making with my Democratic colleagues, that look, you're more than a quarter of Democratic voters are pro-life. Stop pushing people out of the party. People come up to me all the time back home and tell me, I used to be a Democrat, but I'm pro-life, and so I've left the party. And it's not like I stand there and argue with them, because they've made that decision that they can't do it. I hope they vote for me, but it's. There's nothing else good I could say here, so let me just stop myself.
One final question. This young woman over here.
Why do you think that Republicans are more tolerant of pro-abortion Republicans versus how the Democratic Party has treated you and other pro-life Democrats?
Well, why do you think that's the case? I can more.
There's 36 gubernatorial elections this year, and at least 7 states have no pro-life candidates for either major party, Illinois included, and like Oregon and Vermont. But there's exactly one pro-life Democrat running, and that's in South Dakota.
I'm not really sure especially when we're talking about governors. I think that there are more. I think the pro-life activists and organizations just don't have as much influence on the Republican side. I'm not exactly sure why, but I think that's just the case. The Democratic side, the pro-choice abortion groups have more influence, and I don't know why exactly that is. So I can't really answer that question why that's the case. But the Republican governor of Illinois is not going to win, and one of the reasons is because he went back on his word and signed a bill that provided. Said that Medicaid would cover abortion in the state. So it was. It really has. That's one of the reasons he's has. I don't think is that he shot whatsoever in the state. But Illinois Republicans have been divided on the issue of abortion. I hate to end on a question.
Let's end in a happy place then. So there are a lot of young people in the room. Do you like being a politician? And would you recommend it to a young person who's eager to make a mark in the world, help out in some way? And I assume this is a good answer, 'cause, then this will
Yes.
end in a happy place.
Better hope it does.
I know. I should have checked this. I should have checked this beforehand.
No, despite what, despite how I feel some of these days, I really, as I said earlier, I think it's something I feel called. I think in general, and that's sort of the way I feel I was taught as a Catholic. We have Catholic social thought, social in teaching that we should embrace and embody and take to the world. And being involved, whether you run for office or you just want to serve somewhere. First of all, government. I've been trying to bring this message because up until actually Donald Trump's election, I think sort of there's a lot of sense that I got from college students that sort of politics in general, just sort of, we don't want to do that. There's no good that comes out of that. If we want to get something done, we're going to, join a non-governmental organization. We're going to do something outside of the political sphere because politics is, we don't want to get involved there. And I always would say, so much, no matter what you want to see done, change you want to see, government, no matter what you think of it, government has a large role that it plays. And so if we don't have good people who want to be doing all kinds of jobs in government, not just running for office, but working as for a member of Congress, working in the bureaucracy, department or agency somewhere, if you don't have good people who want to do that, then you're going to have people who get into these positions who don't have the best motives out there. And we talk about people running for office, if no one who's, really has real ideals and wants to do something running for office, you're going to get people who are in it for something else, like, just self-promotion, and that's, whatever else you feel that you can get out of it for yourself. And I don't want to see that happen. I've seen too many people. There's a lot of good people who have left Congress over the last, especially 6 to 8 years, because they've been frustrated with the way things are going. But I've stuck with it. I plan to stick with it, no matter how many rumors my people who want to get rid of me are spreading now. Oh, Lipinski's not going to run again. I'm running again, plan to run again in the next election. But that's what the nasty things people like to spread. I still feel like I can make a difference. And I tell you, this primary was very, very difficult on me and my wife. I think that though I felt, the support that I received from people that in itself was gratifying, and I felt like I'm doing the right thing. And if I lose, it's because I'm doing the right thing. And there is, and I know this, and I start feeling, well, I'm being selfish about this. But there's no better feeling than that, to sort of feel like I'm doing the right thing, and feel like I'm being attacked because I'm doing the right thing. And there are so many people who came up to me. And I spent a lot of time campaigning in Catholic churches. Catholic churches that still sort of are supportive, and people who are Catholics who are supportive of pro-life positions and know what religious liberty is about. And I had so many people thank me for standing up and not. And I think they've seen so many people flip, so many people say one thing and then fold, that they were kind of surprised almost that Lipinski actually says this stuff and now he's really taking heat for it and he hasn't changed. And whether, because I'm a I shouldn't say this, especially with a Polish man sitting here. Part of the reason I'm stubborn, I think it's part of my Polish blood.
Sure.
Thank you. Of course. Thank you for.
Absolutely.
In some ways, look, I got into this, and I'm sorry I'm going on so long. You've been sitting here a long time now. But when I first ran for Congress, I didn't expect to be the pro-life Democrat in Congress. All right, there's a couple of us now. But I just always felt like, and I didn't intend to be. I didn't want to be sort of, well, that's who I am. That's not what I ran as, but I ran as being pro-life because I am, and I will always be pro-life. And, I guess I was called to be in this place now. I didn't expect to be. That I'm seen as the pro-life Democrat in Congress. And so I didn't move, I didn't change. I'm stubborn, I'm not gonna move. It's what I believe, and I'm gonna win or lose at that. And there's no, I don't understand even the possibility of changing or flipping on this because honestly, look, I don't know how many, and I hate to say this, again, Catholic guilt, which there's a lot of good things about it. Not everything's good, but there's a lot of good things. I really believe that I'm going to be facing God after I die, and I'm going to be called to account for what I've done and what I haven't done. And that is so much more important than being a member of Congress. I'm not going to, if I lost, I'm not going to be out on the street starving. That's not an issue. So what do I have to lose? I have to lose being in this position, which I really enjoy. I think I'm doing good things for people, but that's never can ever be more important than doing what I feel God wants me to do. And it's as simple as that for me.
A politician standing on principle, I think, is a great place to end. Thank you so much for your candor and your openness. I mean, it was really...
That's the problem I have as a politician.
Listen, you don't have to. They keep sending you back so far, right? But really, thanks so much for joining us, and we'd love to do it again sometime.
Thank you.